Good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming here this evening. I would like to take a moment to thank the Bulgari Hotel for hosting us tonight, and Sharon Podroysky, our committee member who made the introduction. To date, the Art of Wishes has raised over £8.3 million and fulfilled fulfilling over 4,000 wishes for children living with a critical illness, bringing them light and joy when they need it most. This could not have happened without the amazing and incredible generosity of each and every one of you. So I would like to personally thank you. The NFT world is a really exciting topic. We had our first NFT work in our last Art of Wishes gala last year, a work that was created to represent the 15,000 wishes granted by Make-A-Wish UK since 1986. I hope that each and every one of you finds the topic of interest and value. I, for one, am very excited. And with that, I would like to give a special thank you and welcome to Alex, Bernadine, and Kenny for being with us tonight and for sharing their valuable experiences and insight. Kenny, by the way, flew especially from New York. So really, a big thank you. I would like to welcome Alex, who's going to be the host of the discussion tonight. Alex has had leadership roles in a few art tech companies, leading pioneering projects over the last several years, and appearing in publications such as the Financial Times, Times Magazine, The New Yorker, and many others. Alex often presents on NFTs and the Web3 ecosystem at institutions such as the Tate, Central St. Martin, and NFT NYC. Alex, the stage is yours.
I must say thank you so much, everyone that came today. I was in the exact same position a couple of years ago where people were asking, oh, have you heard of those NFTs? And I'm like, oh my God, actually, I need to do some research. And I'm so grateful the Arts of Wishes has organized this evening because we're able to actually learn from speakers ground up today. So one of the first speakers will be Bernadine Bröcker. She will give a brief introduction about the history of NFTs, some of the key things that I think we should discuss today before we jump into our panel. After that, we'll be followed by Kenny. So I will do a brief introduction of Bernadine. For those of you that don't know her already, she is a well-published and prominent speaker in the NFT space and the community. She has been selected by Apollo magazine in 2018 in the 40 under 40 rubric in the art world. The same year, she helped coordinate Christie's first Arts and Tech Summit in London, which was specifically focused on blockchain. So it's amazing to have her this evening, 4 years later, in retrospective, talking about this. Without further ado, I'm going to pass on the word to Bernadine. Can we have a round of applause?
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me here today. And before, of course, Kenny is going to give a fantastic talk about everything to do with NFTs and art, I'm going to just give a little bit of context about what this is and why it has happened. My job here today in the next 15 minutes or so is to give you a bit of context, because a lot of people feel like NFTs came out of nowhere, don't really understand what this is, why are people obsessed with it, what does NFT even mean? So I'm here to tell you a little bit about that. So first of all, I just wanted to get a bit of an idea. How many of you first heard about NFTs when a Beeple sold for 69 million at Christie's for, yeah. Okay, so a few of you. How many of you still don't know what an NFT is? Okay, a few of you as well. Okay, so well, what's interesting about Beeple is he was a digital artist for a very long time, and that work is sold as one work, but it's actually a collage of daily drawings that were done every single day for 13 years. And he grouped them together into one lot. So if you think about it, it's actually 13 years worth of drawings. And he would post them on a blog that he would post for free to everyone in the world. And they weren't always politically correct. So I chose one that was relating to the art world. So he did an artwork that he then put a subtitle saying, I won't read it out loud. But basically, he's kind of making fun of everything and everyone, and in a way that's completely unpolitically correct. But bear in mind, this was for already 13 years ago, so our political correctness has also evolved over those 13 years, hasn't it? But the buyer who bought it at the time said, for me, this is an invaluable work because it actually represents 13 years worth of time. And that's really interesting to think about in terms of the blockchain, because blockchain is all about time stamping things that happen online. So it's about being able to trust that something happened at a specific moment in time and that no one can change that timestamp. So it's kind of significant that he bought it for the fact that it represented 13 years worth of time, that no one would be able to go back and rewind and redo a daily drawing for 13 years. And also, Metakovan has a museum called B20 where they're planning to exhibit these works, and they sold tokens that were going to be tickets to that museum in a virtual reality world to be able to see these 13 years worth of drawings. So it's kind of interesting because it's kind of emulating what happens in a physical world, but in a digital sense. So after that Beeple sale, of course, everything started growing immensely. And August 2021, this slide is not very well visible, but Christie's made a sale in March. Sotheby's made a huge sale of CryptoPunks in June. And then in August, it grows. But in the chart, the colors are actually not just art, but also collectibles, what people call PFP projects, which are profile picture projects. So it's moving out of just the art world and into other types of NFTs that are being sold. So, and of course, this is also coming into a history of artists who have been playing around with technology. And if you're interested in that, I recommend looking at Vera Molnar, because she actually was playing around with artificial intelligence before you even had computers, and machine learning and how randomization works within art. So if you want to look at it from an art context, that's a really interesting place to look. But so just what is an NFT? NFT stands for non-fungible token. And what it basically is a reference to a digital asset. So what you're owning within your wallet is a proof of something that exists digitally. And so then in your wallet, that is a crypto wallet. So these wallets were developed originally to be able to store cryptocurrency, but you can now also store references to other digital assets that are not digital money. Is everyone following so far? A little bit? And then what's interesting about these NFTs, non-fungible tokens, is that because you have these digital assets in your wallet, you can use it in virtual worlds. So if you're And virtual worlds can be anything. People always immediately think of virtual reality, but it's also you could have your crypto wallet while you're browsing the web, while you're looking at websites, while you're looking at Instagram. You might have your digital wallet there. So that's probably why Facebook is also slightly interested in this space. But the last thing in this is that your wallet and what's in it then also makes you unique and makes you connected to others who own similar things. So that's kind of the interesting phenomenon that starts happening here. And as mentioned, this is more on the kind of boring tech side. The thing that you own in your wallet is a certificate. It's not the actual digital asset. You actually link through a smart contract to the storage of that digital asset. And most people use like perma-web storage such as IPFS or Arweave. And you can then own it within your personal wallet, right? So this is the NFT, but it's linking to something that exists online, and you can have it in a wallet that you then use around the web. So in essence, the most important things are timestamping, the fact that you can definitely know that something happened at that particular moment in time by a computer. The fact that it's encrypted, so no one, and it's randomized, so no one can guess or try and decrypt what's been going on there. The fact that not one company, organization, computer has any control over this information, so it's completely decentralized, and therefore there are also no gatekeepers to this information. It's disintermediating the process of getting access to that data. But what was really surprising to those of us who've been in the blockchain space for a long time is that it actually led to community. And what I'll spend the next little bit about is explaining that community bit. And I'm going to try to do 13 years of history of the blockchain in 5 minutes. So 13 years ago, the Bitcoin white paper was published. And it's a white paper that's talking about a new way to handle money that wouldn't need banks. Bear in mind, this was right after the financial crash, and people were very distrustful of the financial systems and trying to find alternatives. So Bitcoin was written during that time. And that was really, it was people coming together and saying, we need to be able to have a way to have money without relying on the banks. And at the time, it was really interesting how many people started believing in it almost like it was a religion, that it was something that, and we still see that today, right? But people started thinking about, could we use this Bitcoin protocol to save art? And one example is a scribe that already in 2010, 2011 was trying to use the blockchain protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, to save art on it. But they had to close that business. And the reason they did was because while the concept made sense of trying to save digital art using the Bitcoin blockchain, this infrastructure wasn't mature enough. So it was too early in 2010. Then in 2015, something else comes along. But it's nothing to do with art. It's a game called Spells of Genesis that you can start, instead of owning a cryptocurrency, you can start owning trading cards on the blockchain, and people start trading them with each other. What happens in 2016 is that instead of being trading cards that are already created, there was a new movement called Rare Pepe. Pepe is a frog. I don't know if you've come across this. There's a great documentary about him on BBC at the moment, if you're interested. But what happened was, in Spells of Genesis, you had cards that were created by someone and then distributed to all of the users, and they were trading them between each other in their wallets. In Rare Pepe, everyone could make their own Pepe. So this is, for example, a Pepe Basquiat that someone created and minted onto the blockchain and then sold. So everyone started creating these different Pepe interpretations of whatever. Pepe is a frog that comes from a comic book, and he's quite easy to draw, so people loved reinterpreting him in a different way. But then some other artists started experimenting as well. This is Dada.art, where they started creating this exquisite corpse game, where basically you could only do it from a browser. You would start a drawing, someone else around the world would continue it, and you basically started having these collective drawings that were created. And the ownership of that drawing was split based on who had participated in it using the blockchain. So it was quite interesting. They were trying to create this time-stamping technology. And some of the drawings that were done were beautiful. Like, this was using technology like Microsoft Paint style drawing, right? Really, really basic. You could only do it in one session. You couldn't save it and go back to it. And these artists were spending time just creating these drawings, collaborating with each other from all around the world. And now, these have actually evolved in value, but also even some artists are now showing these exquisite corpse drawings within virtual worlds in order for people to discover them. So what started happening all of a sudden, these were all kind of games, right? Up to this point, it's games, it's experimentation, it's kind of interesting. But then all of a sudden, in January 2018, Homer Pepe, so Homer Simpson's version of Pepe, suddenly sells for $38,500 at an event in New York City. And everybody kind of went, hold on a second. This is like actual money here. Up to now, it's like hundreds of dollars here, maybe $10, $5, and then $38,500. And it was actually a good investment because he sold it in 2021 for $320,000. So interesting. But at the time, everyone thought, this is crazy. This is crazy. How can you pay $38,500. And this is when suddenly the financialization of NFTs kind of started happening. So also bear in mind, at this point, the term NFT doesn't exist. These are just people experimenting with the blockchain, doing digital art, doing some experiments about some interesting things that could happen. And then the next, so a few months later, you have an event with Ethereum and Consensus where a crypto kitty sells for $140,000. So all of a sudden, it's like people are seeing value in this beyond the experimentation. Crypto kitties, I don't know how many people have come across them before. It was a game where if you had a cat and someone else had a cat, you could merge them together and create a new cat. So everyone started breeding cats, and they could get more and more unique and interesting. And so this specific one was kind of unique and interesting. This photo that's very difficult to see is actually how that cat was sold at the time, because wallets weren't that good yet. So they actually, because it was real money and they were worried about people with their wallets and whether it was going to be secure, they actually transferred it on a little mini computer that had the CryptoKitty on there, rather than an actual wallet, because they were worried about people feeling secure that they really got their NFT. So what happened with CryptoKitties is really the big shift. So the CryptoKitties, as you can see, they really are very diverse. It created a standard on the Ethereum blockchain called ERC-721, which is the standard of how you technologically save these non-cryptocurrency assets onto the Ethereum blockchain. So it was, even though it was a game and even though it was all fun and games and everything, that standardization of how that worked was actually a big shift for the blockchain community, because everyone agreed if you saved it in the ERC-721 standard, then you're following a protocol that we're all going to be using. And we're all going to build crypto wallets to work with ERC-721 tokens, etc. So that is actually NFT, the ERC-721. So then in June 2017, another project comes forward. This is quite famous now. But at the time, these artists created these 10,000 unique pixeled works and couldn't give them away. They couldn't even find enough people who wanted to have them. And still, they were, Anyway, it's fascinating. Now, today, I think some of you might know, they sell for millions at auction, etc. But the interesting thing there, again, going back to that concept of community. So we saw community with how people were experimenting with blockchain, kind of doing exquisite corpse things, doing different things. This also started a community. There were people that owned, there were, some of these are apes. Let me see if I can find an ape in here. Well, there, that's a big ape. People who owned ape CryptoPunks connected with each other and started actually saying, we're like an ape club. Well, then it slowly became the Bored Ape Yacht Club and that kind of thing. So it's suddenly evolving into all of these different communities of people. And the reason that community is there is because you could see what's in someone else's wallet. They can tell you they own an ape, but you can check, and you can see when they bought it, and you can see how much for. So all of a sudden you get this community because you're getting all of these transparent transactions. So at this time, what Alex mentioned, I organized a conference at Christie's that was exploring blockchain, and we had the people from Larva Labs on stage at Christie's talking about this, and I still remember at the time people were like, yeah, I don't know if this is really something. It's interesting, but I don't know. And at the time, they were even saying, this is really an interesting application of blockchain. It's really going to be a fascinating one. And at this event, we actually gave away NFTs by a generative artist called Robbie Barrett. I don't know if I still have it there. No. A generative artist called Robbie Barrett that now sell for like close to $1 million, but we gave them away at that event. It's insane. So it's incredible. But the reason why, I keep trying to analyze why this is happened. And I think that what it is the standardization. So the fact that everyone agreed to how it worked. The fact that you have this community and the fact that you have this transparency. That everyone can see from each other you bought that, and I can see that you spent that money and you actually care about this, etc. So your street cred is, how do you say that, supported by your crypto wallet. So anyway, Kenny's going to be speaking next. In December 2020 is when he started minting. But that was also about the point when I started thinking this is getting a little bit ridiculous here, because we had $8.2 million worth of NFT sales in just that month. And it was like, wow, this is really like big now. Because it was 2.6 million in November. Then by February 2021, that's when people were like, okay, this is really picking up here. Because you had 220 million worth of NFTs sold in 1 month, when 250 million had been sold in all of 2020. And also, we were slowly getting out of COVID, but people were still buying. So it was kind of like, it's not just a weird pandemic thing. And then, of course, March 2021 is when everyone heard about the Beeple. So then there's the huge boom, right? Everyone starts going into the NFT space. Brands, different types of events, all kinds of things. There are different types of NFTs being created, a lot more that I could have covered today. But I hope that this gave you a little bit of context about how this whole thing happened before the boom. And without further ado, I'm really happy to pass over the mic to, well, Alex first, who's going to introduce Kenny. And remember, community.
Wow, thank you so much, Bernadine. It might sound overwhelming at first, but trust me, the more you hear it, the more you learn. Thank you so much for the brief introduction and the very condensed introduction to some of the key things in the space. We're going to be followed by Kenny, who's an writer, advisor, curator, has exhibited across the world and as well as curated some of the key exhibitions focusing on NFTs. He's also a member of the faculty at the University of Zurich. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on the words to Kenny. Round of applause.
I was kind of hoping there would be a podium that I could hide behind with my outfit, but we'll just look from the waist up. Okay, how do I get this? Okay, so on the way here, my taxi driver just said to me, "What are you doing?" So I said, "I'm going to speak at a benefit." And he said, "About what?" I said, "Digital art." He goes, "Oh, NFTs. I want to buy some NFTs. Tell me what to buy. I want to be rich." And I'm like, I didn't know if that was a positive sign or a sign that maybe we should find out how to short NFTs and run. But things have changed radically. And I think the way that I'm going to choose to explain this terribly complicated concept, a lot of the issues I'm not even quite 100% certain about myself, but that's nothing unusual. I would use my own career as a kind of case study, because I think why we're sitting here talking about this subject in such a short period of time has to do with how it's affected my life. And since I got involved over about 2 years ago, not one day of my life has been the same since. So I think I'm just going to use as a case study, like my career. So I started in university, studied philosophy, went to school in Washington, D.C., had never been to a gallery in my life until after I went to graduate school, which was for law school. After studying philosophy, there wasn't much to be done. Went to the National Gallery when I was in school and visited the East Wing and saw contemporary art. And that was the first time I had been in a contemporary art museum. And there wasn't much to do with the philosophy degree. I saw Twombly and Basquiat and Warhol in the museum, but I had no notion that art could be bought or sold. And I was so naive. I call myself idiot savant. I thought that art just went from the artist to the museum, and that was the end of the equation. After what I knew I didn't want to practice law, but it was a good place to hide for a few years until I figured out what I did want to do. And I wanted to do something creative and entrepreneurial. I never went to law school. I took the exams. I told my family and my employers I was in night school. And I began writing for a law firm, honing my writing skills, worked on the floor of the American Stock Exchange. After law school, I handed out 100 resumes in the garment district and got a job for a tie designer. Like Willie Loman carrying these monstrous bags of ties across the East Coast, constantly getting lost and not selling very many ties, needless to say. So procrastinating between jobs, there was, in 1988, was the estate sale of Andy Warhol. And I was no great fan of Warhol's at the time, and I think this relates in a sense to how I felt about these crypto punks when I first saw them. I thought they were the most stupid, ridiculous thing I've ever seen. When you see all of these pictures of the frogs and the apes and the bears, I mean, it's reducing us all what I call like infantilism. I mean, the art market, this whole market is turning us all into a bunch of ridiculous children. But after I found out that art could actually be bought and sold, I saw an ad in the newspaper for Warhol, for a Twombly, Joseph Beuys and Sigmar Polka show. I went into the gallery and then I took out an unsecured loan and bought a piece of art. They looked at me like I was nuts, as some of you may be thinking at this point. And I had passed the bar exam somehow, took a part-time job practicing, bought the art and became like an instant curator. And I had found my calling, something that was entrepreneurial, creative, somewhere between the academic world and the commercial world, which really powers me. And if anything, throughout all of these discussions, everything I'm going to get into now, all I really care about besides my family is art. I love, love, love art. And it's what I do 7 days a week. It's my hobby. I don't go to films. I'm film illiterate. I just love looking at art and learning. And art is about satisfying the curiosity and why you're all here, trying to understand some of this lunacy. And anyway, so then I got a job at the New School. I realized like I could teach anyone post-war art in a few months, but I needed to learn a bit more and dig a bit deeper, which applies to how I got started in crypto. And I just conned my way into a teaching job at the New School. I had curated a few shows, never taken an art class in my entire life. I took a drawing class in law school and a sculpture class. The dean said he would hire me on probation for 6 classes. I would read 3 chapters of the art history book Jansen's, standard issue for universities, drink a beer to get my nerves up and then teach it, and then move on to the next 3 chapters. Then I started to curate these shows. And again, like just law school, if anything, was like military training, and it taught me the kind of like if I could, when I teach kids, and I'm teaching at NYU, a class on NFTs this semester, School of Visual Arts, everywhere from Harvard Law School, Yale, Brown, Art Institute of Chicago for a number of lectures. It's really all about dedication and perseverance and just applying yourself. Anything is, no matter what it is. So these are some of the artists that I work with in their very first group exposure ever, before they even were represented by galleries. Cecily Brown in the upper left, Wade Guyton, who made computer prints. I exhibited him in a show in the 90s before he had a computer printer. His auction record is enormous. Joe Bradley, Catherine Bernhard on the upper, whatever it is that you're right. And then Rachel Harrison, who had a retrospective at the Whitney a number of years ago. So from there, I was sticking my own artworks because I had been making them cheekily all along, and I was curating these shows with these amazing artists who had no gallery representation and putting my own works beside them amongst my peers. The art world, I mean, there's a pretty illustrious crowd here, which is a little bit intimidating for me. I see lots of friends and a few maybe not so friends from some of the writing that I've done in the past, but I'm not going to let that hamper my enthusiasm. But I had to make a living by being a dealer, and I hated it. I mean, I joke I can't sell, excuse my bad sense of humor, but I can't sell drugs to a drug addict. I'm terrible at it. I don't quite have the personality for it, which you're bound to understand in a few short minutes. And I made this artwork, Dealer, the way Prince was trying to get out of a record concert and scrawled slave on his face, and I made this in the 90s. But the art world is a very hierarchical, very exclusionary, where access is completely controlled by the big galleries and the small galleries. And although the NFT space is meant to be without gatekeepers, there are still gatekeepers of a different stripe. But I'll always be an outsider, even though I'm entrenched up to my ears in art and everything about it. I will always have the mindset of someone outside the system. Never accepted, always pigeonholed, compartmentalized. The art world knows one word: no. No, you can't do this. No, you can't say that. And no, you can't behave like this. And I'm not terribly good at the word no. So I haven't made an enormous amount of friends in the art world. And part of the reason why was this type of writing I've done. So I told some of the team of Batia before I came here that I lost my luggage on the plane, that the airline lost my luggage, because this is kind of the way, Nam June Paik, who has a show at Gagosian now in New York, one of the great, great, great artist that employed videos since the 60s. He said he became an artist to sleep late. I would say I became an artist so I could dress like this and almost get away with it. But so what I did do was write. I teach to learn. The reason I started teaching basic art history was I couldn't bear the thought of going back to school again after grad school for law, of all things. So I started teaching art history, and I've never stopped. And I've been teaching for 30 years, and I love it. Preparing these slides. What I say in technology is like dog years. 1 year in technology changes with such rapidity and velocity. It's like 15 years of real life. And I started to write these articles. So I would go to art fairs to learn, to buy, to sell, go to auctions. And then I would find out a lot of all the machinations of the art world, and I would write about it. And because I collected buckets of art over the course of my curatorial career, I had a way to make a living without relying on anyone. So I was pretty free and easy. This is an article where I revealed that the Prince of Saudi Arabia was hiding his Leonardo da Vinci Salvator Mundi on his yacht, which I broke. It was translated into 50 languages, and ultimately there was a recent Sony film about it. And what I started to do was, because the art world to this day will not recognize me as an artist because I don't fit the role, I don't fit the mold. I haven't gone to the right schools, I haven't had the right education, I've never had a job, I'm all but unemployable as I sit here. And so I just did it myself, like I've done from day one. I curated my own shows in these hit and run spaces before the word pop-up even existed, where I showed the work of Cecily and all these other artists. Cecily, one of the most coveted, most brilliant painters today. And so I embedded these short narrative digital videos that I would make into my articles in ArtNet. And that was my career. So the art world I would never have a market for my work. I would never have a way to make a living from my work, but I wasn't not going to make what I wanted to make, how I wanted to make it. So no one else would be foolish enough to write the articles I wrote, so I had a built-in audience by embedding my own articles into my writing. Since art, this is a cave drawing. It looks kind of like a frenzy at Sotheby's or Christie's last week. Since art came off the wall of the cave, it's been coveted and bought and sold, and it always will be until there's nuclear conflagration. The fact is, what sells? Mostly paintings and sculptures. Why do paintings sell so much? Because they're very portable, easy to store in the free port, easy to transact, easy to move around, easy to stack, easy to hang. So we live in a digital age, obviously. We're all addicted to our phones, some more than others. During COVID, I clocked like 16 hours of screen time on my telephone in one day, which that's my personal best. I'm quite proud of it. But like, why is digital art the poor relative in the fine art world? We live in a time where no one has not been touched by digital technology. Contemporary art is plain and simply a reflection of our time, socially, politically, and economically. Why is digital art not collected? Why? When I would sell some videos, when I would have a group shows once in a while of my own work, I would stick a few videos on a USB stick. And I don't even remember like which videos went on which stick to who and what the edition was. So there was really no ready way. It's funny people complain about digital art, saying that it could only be seen on your wallet and on your computer, when the lion's share of art in circulation is in the free port, in storage. And I've never looked through the art in my storage to apprise myself. Anyway, so you would think that digital art would be embraced because we live in digital times, and it increases more so on a minute-by-minute basis. Let's look at video art and digital. Steve McQueen, one of the greatest artists in this country, if in the world, who has a major museum show in the Pirelli Museum in Italy now. His auction record is a piddling $32,000. Bill Viola, and I'm not like a money person, trust me. Anything I touch when it comes to money typically turns to lead, other than the 10,000 NFTs I sold in the past year and a half. But Bill Viola, the foremost video artist, $700,000 record. Nam June-paik, who I mentioned, his auction record is $1.3 million, and that's really because of the fact that he, again, like deploys his video works into sculpture. So that's just ridiculous. Why has the traditional art market been dragging its feet about NFTs? Fear is a natural defense mechanism. People are scared to learn something new. I mean, I am long in the tooth. I am not young, and I'm open to change, which is unusual. And the art world, out of all the businesses I've worked in, fashion, floor of the stock exchange, legal profession. I had this notion before I got into art that everyone was drinking absinthe and hanging from the chandelier and going to orgies. And boy, was I wrong. The art world is more conservative than the law firms I worked at. I was so taken aback by this, like the mentality was just astonishing. And that's why the art world has this kind of gallery system that's quite antiquated, only about less than 200 years old, where a gallery represents a stable of artists. And I mean, it's amazing. The fine art world is about 65 billion a year, give or take. Last couple of weeks were the strongest auctions ever in the history of contemporary art auctions. And I would say about 5% is codified contractually. It's the only multi-billion-dollar business that literally is all, you can go to Basel, which I've kind of done, and you can, without even shaking a hand, you could spend $1 billion in about 22 minutes. It's not the most difficult thing. And it's amazing that everything is kind of not contractualized. Beeple, you've heard about Beeple. This is not my sensibility, I want to state first and foremost. But what's interesting is the fact that this is an artist who worked every day of his life, never sold a single piece of work until, I can't even look at that, it's so horrible. Never sold a single piece of work until last October, a year and some months ago. But he had always stuck to his guns and persevered and had the doggedness and tenacity never to give up making art and following his dream. He had been a successful, what is not terribly much spoken about is, he was a wildly successful graphic designer, video artist, doing fashion shows and graphic designs. He was very successful. Immediately, the art world would draw up the barriers and he would be excluded because he was already successful in another field. The art world looks at people like that with great trepidation, and he would never find a foothold into the art world until Christie's put together the sale and sold his piece. I found this ginormous cash register image, and it just had the number 69,000 on it, so I added a few zeros. And then all of a sudden, ka-ching, the art world wakes up to NFTs because the art world understands one thing. I always joke that I don't get to speak about art because I'm in the art world and nobody wants to talk about art. It's always reduced to the money situation. So a new market comes to life. This is my OpenSea account. I created my own PFP account. I'll get into that in a second. But so there's a new, the art world is always paying lip service to cultivating new audiences, but the art world, largely white men have been the driving force in the art collecting market. In the last 10 years, the floodgates have opened for artists, women artists, artists of different sexual orientations and different colors, black artists, African-American artists. There's been a revolution, but still the business is extraordinarily closed. Social media, the advent of Instagram, blurred the boundaries of artists from disparate geographical locations that can share visually what they're doing, but there was still no way for them to sell it without relying on the antiquated gallery system. So again, like you could look up any far-fetched thing in the world, apes, bats, hippopotamuses, unicorns, and then put NFT next to it and you'll get all this crap, which is like, it's embarrassing, I must say. We're all a bunch of, adults talking about these silly things, and it's now $40 billion a year, about to eclipse the entire breadth of the fine art market, I would say, within the next 2 years. This is another unspeakable act. Madonna, in collaboration with people, just sold her NFTs and jumped into the fray. So it's like the market, unfortunately, today is about 75% of these cartoon animals, infantilism, and collectibles. Celebrities, Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is actually quite clever about with her NFTs. Madonna she's going to be like, if she gets any, I shouldn't even say that. I'm going to get myself into trouble. But anyway, I'll skip it. But she's going to turn into a baby if she gets any more procedures done and depicts herself in this fashion in her NFT. Giving birth to like caterpillars and trees, but help me from myself. Okay, so then I launched my first NFT. I found out somebody mentioned NFTs to me in September of 2020. I had been making digital art to no avail for 30 years. And I would just literally make it, show it when I organized my own shows. Then when the market went nuts, I sort of got bored and I forged a relationship with Zaha Hadid. I curated exhibitions for her all over the world, and I just fell in love with her mindset and the power of thought she had. And again, like 35 years without building a single building and the stick-to-itiveness of her. And we used to lunch every weekend, traveled all over the world. I curated projects for her with Norman Foster and Elena, his wife, in Madrid, in New York, at Sonnabend Gallery. And I wasn't far from an architectural aficionado, or I just love people that are self-wrought and never give up, and Zaha was one of them. Anyway, and then I was doing my art writing, found out about NFTs, and this was one of the images that I had created to put into one of my ArtNet articles about our friend Donald Trump. That's another issue that I'll try not to get too far into. I mean, I'm glad to be back here, because like when I lived here for 15 years. I went back to New York 3 years ago, and I mean, all joking aside, it's a terrible time to be American. I mean, it's shameful. It's upsetting, really shocking what this world is going through today. Anyway, so this was an image, put it into Nifty Gateway. Someone told me about NFTs. I didn't understand it the same way most of you probably didn't quite understand the beginning of this conversation, if not all of it. And I sold some NFTs. I'm probably the only person that ever went into NFTs with no idea about the money. No, it wasn't a cash grab. It was just a way for me to show my art and to maybe sell some pieces to a new constituency of people that never existed in the fine art world before. I sold NFTs for $4,000. I was elated, and it immediately occurred to me from that very second that there was a revolution afoot. And the revolution is that people like me that are passionate about what we do, that love art, care about art, but can't fit in for obvious reasons. And this was a way for like that people could be, anyone would be accepted if they did something that just seemed good, that appealed to people. So I wrote about it in the art newspaper on my Instagram, and I just started proselytizing about it, because it just appeared to me that this could be absolute, like turning the entire history of the art market upside down in various ways. Then I wrote my first feature last February, and I stopped running after art fairs, running after gossip. I had people trying to beat me up in public, in restaurants and art fairs, lawsuits threatened, people trying to cancel me, people giving me death threats because I did something that's quite foreign notion to the art world. I told the truth. I see some people snickering in the back row, but I'm not going to. I just tell the truth about what I see, and it raises the hackles of people, because the art world loves lies. There was just an article that I didn't write last week in ArtNet about this very subject. And again, like, there's nothing I would change about the art world. Everyone should do what they want. I love the galleries. They have a pivotal role in nurturing the careers of artists and archiving and all of these things. But there should always be other ways for people that are minded to do so. I don't know where I'm pointing this. I started lecturing. These are all like the big companies that I had like fakely tattooed on my face. I did get the word NFTism tattooed on my arm, which for me is the community. Back to this, NFTs are nothing. To make it more understandable for you, like when you used to buy a Donald Judd or a Dan Flavin, you would get a certificate of authenticity, which was often, it's just a piece of paper that most people would lose because these sculptures had little or no value. If you have the Dan Flavin or any of Sol LeWitt in these pieces, and you've lost this paper, which most did, you can't get a posthumous certificate reissued. So that truly affects the value of your artwork. Now, the certificate of authenticity is forever embedded onto this network of computers. So that's what an NFT is. It's like a certificate of authenticity. David Hockney said he thinks NFTs are stupid and criminal and asinine. But let me tell you, like, I used David Hockney to explain to people what an NFT is. He had a show at the Royal Academy. He showed his iPad drawings. Would you rather have like a paste printed out photo for $300,000? Or would you rather have the computer file that David Hockney made his drawing on? If you owned the file, you could print it either the size of a building on your desk, you could project it. I mean, I have exhibitions where I show paintings. I can't paint a stick figure. I take digital files and get them painted in China or make sculptures digitally. So I gave a lecture last March, and I did it to learn. So I haven't written anything further about all the auctions, all the art fairs. For the first time in my life, something happened that I had all but given hope on. I've been able to make a living from doing the thing that I care most about, which is making art. And since that fateful first drop on Nifty Gateway, I've ended up, I mean, I've sold like 10,000 NFTs in a year and a half. Sometimes it goes quite well, but it's a very volatile business. Come on, change. There's always a problem with the technology. Help. Ugh. Okay. So after I wrote my first article, a gallery in Germany called me and they said, we'd like to understand how we can jump on board of this momentum, and we'd like to curate a show. So I said, I won't tell you how to curate it, but I'll curate it. So I curated a show in Cologne last May at Nagel Draxler. I'm now represented by this gallery. They loved it so much, they ended up opening a crypto gallery. And I don't want to drag on, which I'm beginning to do, and I am jet lagged, but somebody said in a panel discussion that the dealer who owned the gallery would never be able to understand digital art. He was too old. So he basically called me up to prove these people, just prove them wrong. And when I went to dinner for the opening, he said, the only reason you're here is that I was told I couldn't do this. And I said, well, that's fine with me. I'll take whatever opportunity I can get. So this was the exhibition. I curated a show in London last September at Institute, a new platform. There was a line around the block. There was 100 artists from an amazing thing, like I work with artists from every continent in the world. There are artists from Asia, Africa, South America, North America. It's not just a young kid's game. It's not just a crypto bro thing. And there's a lot of amazing women artists, and it still needs, there's probably more diversity in the fine art market now, but that's changing. I sold one of my NFTs to a museum. The ZKM is a media-based museum in Germany. I was asked to curate a section in the Basel Art Fair. I literally was like in tears. The Basel Art Fair, like how on earth did I end up in the Basel Art Fair? Like a Trojan horse sneaking in through these NFTs. And now like they're showing like, and then anytime you start to talk to anyone about NFTs, like I was in Miami where I curated something. Every time I started to speak about it, a flock of people like came around me. It was the most bizarre experience. I did a metaverse space for the Basel Fair with Zaha Hadid. Everything, Zaha, part of the reason she never was able to build during her lifetime was everything was a drawing in the beginning, a painting, and then everything was digital. And their whole entire archive is digitized. So Patrick Schumacher, who took over the company, these are all, a lot of the projects I did with Zaha from a car. I just sold one to a museum in Michigan, designed by Zaha, the Eli Broad Museum. These are all projects I did with Zaha, and we had the artwork that was available in Miami. You could go through this Zaha Hadid architectural practice, created to showcase the digital works that were in the fair. By the way, Zaha's firm is the first time in history that an architectural practice has passed a bequeath to another partner and has flourished. The firm is like adding architects and the business is doubled. It's amazing. This was my show in Miami. I had a show in a gallery in Berlin in January at Nagel Draxler. This is kind of funny because typically the gallery gets 50%. The galleries get paid, and I'm not speaking for anyone in this room or any of the big galleries, but lots of small galleries. There are a lot of mid-level galleries or galleries that will use the money of the artists to run their businesses. And one famous case in the newspapers today about someone who used the money from artists and collectors for his own ends. But in this case, when my work sold because I minted the smart contract, I was paid for the art, and I, in turn, had to pay the gallery. So it turned on its head the traditional notion of the art market where the gallery gets paid and then they pay the artist 50% at some point. Sometimes they don't even tell the artist who bought the work. I've sold work from galleries. I don't even know who the collectors were. It's not right. When you sell an NFT, it's immediate. You get paid immediately. The artist gets paid immediately, and it's readily apparent who the buyer was. I just did this installation in an art fair in New York, and I use this brand new, my theory is that like holographic technology. So soon, rather than looking on your phone or your computer, you'll be able to have a small device and project a 3D artwork into real space. So this is a new technology that just came out of China. First time it's been seen in a gallery where I did this kind of me dancing with these VR goggles, and then I crash into a glass wall and fall. There was a show, I'm finishing up. There was a show, Proof of Art, a short history of NFTs in this amazing museum in Linz in Austria. This is a great book. It should be reprinting soon if you can get your hands on it. I had a call, this is the Palazzo Strozzi. They have a show of Donatello right now, which is not to be missed. You must see that show. It will never, like the Byler show of Goya recently, these are shows that can never be put together again. And I had a call from the director of the museum, and they're doing an NFT show that will run concurrently with the Donatella show. And he wanted to interview me as the essay for the catalog. This is amazing. So forget the cartoons, forget the money. I'm so sick and tired of all of these criticisms. All you hear about is money, money, money in relationship to NFTs, not just NFTs. I found myself saying this, and then I made a song, a music video, money, money, money. I won't make you watch it or sing any part of it. It ended up selling in an auction in Japan for $20,000. Quite chuffed with that one. Museums are getting involved. Bernadine was involved with museums. I got into this ongoing argument with a friend of mine, Max Holein, who runs the Metropolitan Museum. And somebody interviewed me in Vienna and said that Max Holein doesn't believe in crypto art. I'm like, Max Holein, this is all between us, right? He shouldn't be selling the museum's Picasso sculptures at auction. He should be selling NFTs of the 10 billion pieces in the basement of the Metropolitan Museum. This is a way for museums, for institutions, for not-for-profits to create revenue instead of deaccessioning. During COVID, which I've suffered twice, I'm a long-term sufferer, I make no light of COVID, but that also really accelerated the adaptation of technology in the world. And museums, they just should they loosened the rules, which were already loose enough in America to deaccession art at an institution. And museums, they all want to be Larry Gagosian. I can understand why. It's a pretty cool thing to be Larry Gagosian, another brilliant, profound, self-wrought person. And I'm not just saying that because some of his people are here. I really admire him a lot. And I made a book recently, Art Without Substance, because there's no physical substance of the art. But for me, it takes up more volume than a sculpture. People complain about the environmental footprint of NFTs, but if you look at a 60-foot bronze Damien Hirst sculpture being installed somewhere in the UK, trust me, that uses more energy than a year's worth of NFTs. Or all the private planes that flock to Basel, or shipping crates that have single uses. There's a lot of negatives, and I'm not rationalizing. All of these issues are being addressed. The NFT market, the crypto market, is whipsaws with such degrees of speed. There's a bear and a bull market by lunchtime. It is mad. There's been a massive correction recently, which I think is a good thing. I don't think it's a bubble. So I made this piece where I ate a dozen tulips. They happened to be a little bit poison. So I had someone on standby. I had plucked out the middles. At the same time, tulips, which sold for like 100,000 euros in 1647, during World War II, when there was a lack of food to sustain Dutch people, they ate the bulbs minus the center, and it was a way to sustain nutritionally the country when there was such extreme poverty from World War II. So I don't believe any of this, not even Beeple is a bubble. I think there are pockets of assets that become too overvalued, but that you can't just dismiss and make a stupid sweeping generalization that this is going to disappear. This is never going to disappear. We live in digital times, and this is the first time that there's a digital market. This is some artwork I've made. That was a sign in Soho, take care of your belongings, thieves operate. So I plopped it into a Christie sale, scam likely. This is what happened. And again, I love the auction houses. I work with all of them. I use humor as a way to couch my satire and criticisms. This is an artist, Osinachi, who I work with. He's in Nigeria. He never painted or drew. He only ever worked on computers. He made art in Word. This is a series he just released yesterday. They were less than $200 each. He made 1,000. Each one was unique. They sold out in 4 hours. You could buy, people always say that NFTs are, the art is crap. It's all about video games, but it's not. If you did, like anything, I know this amazing conceptual artist, Sarah Friend. She lives in Berlin. She makes the most incredible conceptual art, taught herself coding after studying painting, and she's doing great things. Okay, I'm finishing. Despite there's been, the crypto market's down like 40, 50% in the last couple of weeks. Andreessen Horowitz is starting a new fund for $4.5 billion. Crypto, I wasn't a Bitcoin fanatic. I was a crypto cynic. I don't do anything really solely just for money, and NFTs are no different. And I think there's a lot of positive things, and crypto and the blockchain will have a tremendous impact in the economic future of the world, whether it's real estate title, car title. There's so many things that could benefit by by migrating towards computers and the blockchain. My final slide and comment is that, again, people criticize all these beeples, the money, the 69 million, but this is an amazing article you should all read in the New York Times that just came out yesterday by Jason Farago. And it's about this. There was a group of artists that are in their 20s that are selling for millions and millions of dollars. It's ridiculous. Artists with no history selling for historic prices. It's not just digital assets that are selling for crazy money. Does that mean there's a bubble in fine art? Absolutely not. There's been more growth in the fine art market in the past 25 years than in the previous 250 years. And whether we're facing a recession and on the precipice, it doesn't matter. People have loved art since it came off the wall of the cave, and they always will, and there's no reason why digital art shouldn't be a part of that. Thank you very much. One last thing, I would just encourage anyone who has any questions for the rest of your life about anything, whether there's time to do it now, but I'm very ubiquitous, as my kids would constantly mock me for being on Instagram and Twitter. By the way, the fine art world lives on Instagram and the tech world lives on Twitter or Discord. So anyone could ask me any question at any time, forever, as long as I'm around, and I will get back within 24 hours. And I don't know if you want to have questions now or...
Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. We're going to run a really quick Q&A. We have a couple of questions that accumulated for the speakers, and then we're going to open up the room. So now is a really good time to think what you would like to ask Kenny or Bernadine. Something that's been boiling up, and let's just get it out of the way. You must get this a lot. What do you tell people when they say, why can't I just screenshot this or right-click save? Yeah, you can go first.
Well, people complain that you can infinitely copy a digital file. Last I remember, Cindy Sherman could make 1 million photographs of her film stills if she wanted to. Richard Prince, again, like just between us, has been known to maybe pull a few extra screens of his nurses every once in a while if the right collector rocks up. I mean, everything could be reproduced. Sure, you could reproduce these images, but it's not in anyone's best interest to gratuitously and without bounds to just replicate things. If you're an artist, you want to protect your artistic output. So if you make an edition and it's an edition of 1 or an edition of 10, you stick to it, or you're gonna sabotage yourself. And anything could be created. Paintings could be recreated. Famously, Alec Baldwin wanted to buy a Ross Bleckner, and it was sold. And Mary Boone had him recreate the same painting. And then eventually Alec Baldwin found out.
Would you like to add?
I think it's not so much about the image itself, right? It's much more about the tokens and the references to it and how people can participate in your purchasing and that type of thing, rather than the fact that you have that image. Yeah, the Beeple images are still on his blog. You can still, anyone can still see them, but there's only one wallet with that specific NFT in it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and I think that references the point also when you mentioned that it's about the certificate. Like, it's about the fact that you own that transaction, you own the history of it. So one more thing, I think earlier on you talked about the sense of community and how it played a very large building block, especially for the early projects like the Bored Ape Yacht Club or the CryptoPunks to really thrive in this market. And then we saw that, like, over the years, many different brands entered the space. It has become quite competitive as a brand and quite challenging to actually position yourself or be unique, because the early projects, they each brought a new use of the technology. What would you say, like, because also these brands are not really used to this two-way relationship with the community, like, have you been, like, what's your experience in the market helping, especially, I know, Kenny, you have many projects that you work with. Is there, like, a mutual challenge and, like, ways to overcome it for new people and new projects to enter the space?
Well, I think, like, when I had this word that I trademarked, NFTism, like, what I'm interested in, like, David Bowie was talking, he was a real, he really believed in the internet and using it as a form of creative expression. And he said that the internet collapsed the space between the artist and the audience. And NFTs, in a sense, the way you could differentiate it from traditional art, it really conflates this space between the artist and the audience. So I created a series like the Bored Ape Yacht Club are these, again, all male figures, could be seen as a bit racist and derogatory and stereotypical. And the club was like having these bro parties where everyone went out drinking, and then they released merchandise like Supreme and basketballs and caps. It's a $3 billion business, so you could take what I say with a grain of salt. But then I created one called, like taking all those animals that I showed this melange of them and putting them in a blender, and I made something called Crypto Mutts, and I sold 9,000 NFTs, and it was meant as a satire, and they sold like for $80, but like in an hour, 9,000. And the idea was to make an arts club, to try to, in a grassroots way, to raise the bar of discourse, to introduce some of these crypto native people about art. And I'm always teaching and lecturing. So the idea was, so you go to Discord, and this community is, I go to Discord and I have a dialogue on a daily basis with the people that bought my NFTs. So in the way that like a painting stays on the wall and radiates the art, or you have this transcendental experience of looking through this window of the artist's imagination, when it comes to NFTs, the expectations of the buyers are wildly different. They want an interactive experience. They want to hear from the artist. They want to know what these NFTs are meant to have utility, which is a word like used, bandied around with this community. So they want to be airdropped, be given more art, get access to other works by other artists. So there's expectations that are completely different from the fine art world. And the artists that have done this in the fine art world are like Urs Fischer, Damien Hirst, Tom Sachs, Bjarne Melgaard, and they're all artists, and if they're not prepared to dip into Discord and deal with these people, their projects will suffer, like Urs has, and Damien has a big team that's managing it, and he's doing quite well at it.
Yeah, I guess my experience comes from what Kenny mentioned about working a bit with museums about it, and a lot of the immediate conclusions were, let's take the JPEGs of things that are in our collection and mint them as NFTs. But I think it's more about that community part, and so thinking about the utility, what could you do, what use is it that someone will come to your museum with an NFT on their phone that you will then know that they care about that specific exhibition or that specific artwork or that specific thing. So there are other ways you can use it. And I think what's really exciting as well is kind of this, the way it's reworking the relationships, because people talk about disintermediation, but also these smart contracts, the standard is a buyer and a seller just together. But you're starting to see new ways in which you can configure these contracts. So you could have multiple buyers, multiple sellers. You can have terms that for 5 years after you've sold that NFT, it needs to be this way. And then if any transaction happens with that NFT afterwards, then it'll be different. There are lots of, like, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg of what's going to be possible with these NFTs. And that community feeling is going to evolve even further.
Thank you for that. We're a bit shorter than time. Before my final question, maybe there's, do we have any questions from the audience? Yep, okay, first one.
Hi, Kenny, thank you for that. I thought that talk was absolutely brilliant. My question is, how do you think, as this evolves and gets hotter and hotter, how is it going to impact the physical art world?
Well, that's a great question. I'm kind of a prude when it comes to art in my collecting. And I bought like 3 DVDs over the last 25 years and lost them. Ultimately, I found them when I moved back to New York. But I just think the display, the dedicated display devices of NFTs I think the biggest innovation in the next couple of years are going to be in the metaverse, where instead of having a Zoom talk, you would have a talk in a metaverse where you could be in a room and view things together and experience. My forecast for the future in this regard is that experiencing the art will be more engaging and not necessarily just be on a telephone. So I see easily in a short period, like I showed this holographic projection device, there'll be a small device where you could project a sculpture in your room and take it on holiday with you. So I think, again, like people love pigment. I did an exhibition called The Death of Painting in 1996, because conceptual art and was meant to be like, the death knell for canvas. People will always love drawings and paintings. They hang on your wall. You could rub your nose against them with little or no forethought. During COVID, in the first 3 months of the lockdown, it was the first time in my life that I wasn't late for nothing, always late, running. I didn't wear my watch, I didn't have a plane to catch, and I just screwed my head up against a drawing and a painting every day, and that will never change. So I think some people will always be reticent about digital, and it will always have, there'll always be a Bell's curve. There's a Bell's curve. People say that crypto is corrupt. Crypto is a decentralized network of computers. It's people that are effed up, not computers, not crypto. It's the greed. So I think people, again, it was painted on the cave back in prehistoric times, and nothing will ever change that. I'll always love, pigment on a canvas, the sculptural relief way, that there's just something magical about that. And it's like reading a book. And digital art for me is the same way. But I just started to I collect a lot of NFTs of my peers in my wallet. I have one piece on my desk, and I just plugged it into my light. So when I turn my light on, it goes on without having to think about it. And I think that will go a long way towards having people be more comfortable with this fact. But nothing will ever change in terms of having a big piece of something in front of you.
Would you like to add?
The only thing I'd add is the generational divide. So the expectations of buyers of a different generation, that's probably where there will be a huge shift for the art market. In terms of, to buy something and have a piece of paper that verifies that it is what it is a bit old-fashioned, and it will probably change over the coming years.
Do we have any more questions from? Okay.
She has a question.
There's a mic coming.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much for all the explanation. And I have a personal question.
Uh-oh. Gotta go.
I have an NFT project, and I would like to just share it with a lot of people. And I really believe in it. That can create an impact for planting trees after the purchase of the NFT, the buyer will automatically plant trees. And how can I do all the Discord, all the Twitter in order to promote and create a strong impact for the environment? Do I have to have all these channels and to promote it in this way?
Well, I think that's a really fantastic, I've been doing this for a few years, so I'm considered OG, original gangster. Because this is such a nascent, embryonic phenomenon, if you've been doing it for a few years, you're considered to be old hat at it. But the fact is that people have this misconception that if you make an NFT, you're minting money and you're going to make a fortune overnight, and that's not the case. So the people that are making all of the huge amounts of money that you read about are celebrities, famous people, and people with audiences already. So this is no different from as an emerging artist, or no matter what your project is, and having a project that's actually beneficial to the environment or helpful probably makes it even harder, because people are looking more for these cartoons to make a quick cash grab. A lot of NFTs are simply derivatives of substitutes for securities in the form of an unregulated cartoon. Forget the art world being unregulated. This far exceeds that. But you have to grassroots, you have to nurture a community. You can't just mint something, no matter how pure and good your intent is. You have to find like-minded people. You have to go to Twitter. You have to go to Discord. Everyone has a team. I wish I had a team. I guess I'm a team of one and I can't find anyone. But you're at a great disadvantage if you don't have, you need developers, programmers, coders. It's expensive, gas fees to the implementation of minting an NFT, you have to pay money. The gas fluctuates according to when more people are on it than at other times. It's like timing, a pregnancy or something, to find the time when the gas fee will be at its lowest. So there's no easy answer. You have to really go out there and push like anything. What people don't understand, even with fine art, art is a slow burning process. And even with the rapidity and velocity of crypto, everything good takes time, and you just have to really find your constituency, find like-minded people, and then just expose yourself. in the most shameless fashion, like I do every day.
Actually, I'm going to quickly add to that, because last year we launched a collection with PETA, also raising funds for animals, and I agree with everything that Kenny said. But also, I think right now there are a lot of opportunities to find supporters. Like if you don't choose Ethereum and you look at other blockchains, there's Near Protocol, Polkadot, Solana, Polygon. They have funds that they actually provide to projects like yours, and you can actually apply for those funds where they would support you. So I would look into that a little.
I would look at Tezos. You definitely cannot do a tree thing on Ethereum, because Ethereum right now is not so great when it comes to environmental issues.
I use Polygon.
Yeah. But Tezos, that's a great point, because Tezos just started like $1 billion fund where they have a lot of.
Tezos head office is in London as well. So there are many. Tezos is maybe not the best for development, but it is a really good artist community.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question. Yep. Gentleman in the back. Our DJ tonight.
You mentioned the word community a lot, and it's obviously been when NFT started, that's been used as this like warm, welcoming element for projects and for people to buy in. Now, it's becoming sort of bastardized, just like the word utility, I feel, and some people are saying it, and I think people are buying into it, but I feel some people mean just customers. They say, "Oh, we're building a community." No, you're building customers. What do you think about that? Is it becoming a bit ingenious?
That's a great point. I mean, it's a lot of bullshit, to tell you the truth. The word community is the most misused term in the entire crypto space. Similarly, I would make a parallel. The way that the art world will say a painting is important. If you cure cancer or help somebody get food when they're in poverty, that's important. A painting at auction is not important. And the community of people selling NFTs, typically, again, it's like people are just trying to make a quick buck. The average holding period of an NFT is 60 days. I mean, if you look at the auctions of the contemporary art sales 2 weeks ago, there was a plethora of paintings dated 2020, 2021, 2019. That never used to be the case 10, 15 years ago. That art is fresh paint going right to auction. So I think we're collectively having shorter attention spans, being less, somehow sadly, like less sympathetic to each other, less generous. And I think the word community is ridiculous. It's just a stupid marketing term for speculators. But I have to say, like my NFTism tattoo, which I'm kind of stuck with for the rest of my life, I do find, like when I started in the art world in the late 80s, and there was a tremendous recession, way worse than 2008, where the market didn't constrict, it evaporated, and there was incredible people doing incredible things, helping each other. And I really do find at this stage a palpable sense of like-minded. Like when I started, somebody gave me an Ethereum that was worth $1,600 to facilitate me getting involved, because they thought this would really suit my practice. And you don't see, in the art world today, it's become it's like a contact sport. The art world is so ruthless, so competitive, so cutthroat. Of course, the NFT world is like that too, but I still see some of these kernels of people really caring about other people and trying to help each other. So it's there, but you have to scratch.
Would you like to add, Bernadine?
Just the community is a difficult word in general because it's an oxymoron, right? You're inclusive to only certain people. So it's never going to be everyone. And you have to exclude some people if you're going to have a community. Facebook's slogan at one point was global community. And I think that was, I knew some people working there that had real trouble trying to figure out what that exactly meant. So I think, yeah, it's definitely a difficult term. But I do think that what Kenny was saying about people supporting each other, and even about the Tezos community, people who use Tezos, there were a lot of artists helping each other, amazing types of innovation going on. So I do think there is something good there, and a lot of the headlines miss that.
Thank you, everyone. We have to wrap up. Thanks so much. Thank you, Bata, for hosting the evening, our speakers.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. This was fascinating, and I really wish we had more time because, I mean, this is so insightful. So thank you again for participating. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you find it interesting, and have a good evening.